But one farmer says, seems to me there was a tea party in Boston that was illegal too.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
We shall seek to establish and maintain a dollar which will not change its purchasing and debt-paying power during the succeeding generation.
As anguished shrieks rose up from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Government credit and government currency are really one and the same thing. A reserve of gold and a small reserve of silver.
Why do central banks hold it?
Well, it's a form of reserves.
Why don't they hold diamonds?
Well, it's tradition, long-term tradition.
Well, some people still think it's money.
Good evening and welcome back to the JUNIUS MALTBY channel. It's about time we did a palladium video. We've touched on the platinum family of metals in the past, but tonight I'm going to tell you why palladium is starting to scare the hell out of me. Palladium prices jumping up 8% on the day. I looked at it, it was like up $51, $52 or something in that neighborhood, and making a tremendous amount of headlines. You can see the Kitco News headline there. Palladium hits record high, quote, madness continues in a tight market. A lot of this, it sounds like, is supply side driven. There's been a diminished supply of available palladium. And of course, the biggest market, and we'll take a look at some of this when we go forward, is the automotive and the vehicle market and the application of catalytic converters. There are other applications for palladium, and I'm actually a big advocate of seeing those further explored, and it was the original reason some of these other applications that we'll talk about were the first thing that comes to mind when I actually think of palladium, because when I first heard about it years ago, that was the reason the individual I spoke to recommended palladium as kind of a speculative bet back then, talking about renewable energy, and we'll look at that. But let's check in on gold and silver before we jump all over the platinum family today. Gold and silver both going up once again, finishing in the green above their psychological benchmarks. We have gold holding strong above the 1600 mark, sitting at 1612.40, second day in a row that I can recall where it closed above the 1600 mark after fighting several weeks to get there, after just kissing it barely with some geopolitical fears that were going on after the Iranian situation. Checking in on the little crippled kid they call silver, 1835, up decimal 0.39, up 3 pennies today, almost 4 pennies. We'll call it 0.21%. All right, let's talk about palladium. Hits a record high. Madness continues in tight market. I've kind of avoided these videos because that's what they are. It's madness. Not a big fan. Don't hold any palladium. Don't hold any platinum. If you do, I'm not slamming you. Good for you. Glad you bought it. Hope you're doing well with it. The point of this is why palladium scares me right now and why you don't want to jump in on the madness. Again, this is my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just your neighborhood JUNIUS MALTBY, friend of yours who you tune in to every once in a while to be bored or put to sleep by participating here in the most boring channel on YouTube. So that's my only resume as far as we're concerned with sharing here through the Blue Snowball mic. Most boring channel on YouTube, that's it. Not claiming anything else. But look at the fervor, look at the chaos. When everyone's running to something, when you've got the little old lady across the street saying, "So, did you see the palladium prices today? I bought myself an ounce of palladium. It's a really good investment. I bought it at $2,600 an ounce." And then you go down the block and you're going to get yourself a Slurpee at a 7-Eleven, and he tells you, "Did you see the price of palladium? I just bought me some palladium for $2,600 per ounce, and it is a very good deal, very good investment." That's when the hairs on the back of your neck can just start standing up about anything, really. And that's what's going on, in my opinion, with palladium. We've seen it before. It happened, almost a decade ago with rhodium. Rhodium's been breaking some records too recently, but you want to practice some caution, because if you jump in now and things switch it up a little bit, you're going to be in over your head and you're going to lose your position. The guys that are making out with the platinum family group, especially palladium, are the ones that bought in $150, $200, $300, $400, $500, $600. Heck, if you bought in at $1,000, they are doing pretty good. Buying in now, taking a position on palladium, spot palladium at 28.29.75. Not for me, my friend. I don't think it is the upside to that. The profit potential is a little bit slimmer than what it was if you rewind it somewhat. And we're going to take a look at what happens to palladium and platinum, especially during recessionary events, because you have to look at where the demand for these metals comes from. It's not coming from hedges. It's not coming from major investment groups or even individual buyers like yourself that are parking wealth. What drove palladium up 54% last year and 46% this year is a combination of some speculation, the chaotic fervor, the FOMO, people jumping in because it's the in thing to do right now. It's a combination of that, the supply side, if there is a supply diminishing, and that's the rumors of such, and even the evidence of that is percolating through the investment world, is going to create some interest. And of course, there's the demand side. Remember, economics is simple. Where the supply curve and the demand curve intersect, you have price. That's it. It's that simple. So we've got a constant or increasing demand for palladium, and as you can see right here, it sums up. This is all you need to know really about the palladium market, is strong auto-related demand. Again, shattering the old record high in a market that remains tight due to strong auto-related demand. Where does palladium end up? It ends up in catalytic converters with emission standards changing, mass production of vehicles, lots of catalytic converters being made and put onto these new vehicles. You have palladium, and this really illustrates that point. Palladium consumption worldwide in 2018 by industry, and this is in metric tons. 267 metric tons consumed by automobile exhaust systems. For chemical catalysts, about 26 metric tons. Dental alloys, that's pretty interesting, 15 tons. Jewelry, not much at all, only 12 tons, getting less. Electronics, 7 tons. Very, very little when you look at this chart anyways, consumed by the electronics. Other industries, 5 tons. So an overwhelming, the vast majority of consumption for palladium and application is in automobile catalytic converters. It's kind of an all the eggs in one basket type of a thing for palladium. He's not a very diversified metal when it comes to having a wide swath of uses, and especially a very good resume. It's not like he's got really one job, and that's, okay, clean up this smoke, my friend. And that's it. He's kind of a janitor metal in that regard. He just cleans the air. That's what he's good for. That's what he does. Nothing against him. Not mad at him for it. But that's really all he's really good for. He looks like silver. Feels like it. It's just another gray, benign, somewhat hard, not really useful for a whole lot else metal. I'm not saying he's useless. Of course, we'll talk about the renewable energy towards the end, because they can never unleash that potential for palladium. I think the prices are going to be even more justified if it rises up beyond what we see today. But if automobiles are it, I think what we're riding on at this point is sheer speculation and a lot of gambling. And I'm not one for it, because I don't want to take the ride down that we're going to see in the next coming charts. Now, for years, it was platinum that was the metal in catalytic converters. I remember years ago, I yanked a cat out of an old Toyota 4Runner of mine and got $90 for the platinum that was inside of it. I wonder how much was in there, because they gave me 90, and there was more than that, because the guy that at the scrap yard had to get his cut. So there must be quite a bit of platinum inside a catalytic converter, and I'm guessing there's quite a bit of palladium. Now, these are very rare metals. We've often heard that all the platinum ever mined at the beginning of time could fit in a cube in any little intersection in any small town. I forget the exact measurement. It might have even been 9 feet by 9 feet by 9 feet, something like that. It's a very small cube. It's much smaller than the cube of gold that you've seen displayed by the visual capitalist for all the gold ever mined. And it's absolutely dwarfed by the cube of all the silver ever mined. So it's a very, very rare, the whole family of platinum metals is very rare. The thing that scares me, I'm going to keep returning to this, what frightens me about this family of metals is that they're not a monetized group of metals. They're not typical. They don't have a history of monetization like silver and gold, 7,000 years of human interaction, economics as units of account, settlements of account, payments and debts and services and goods and exchanged and used in Asia and in Europe and in the New World, in Egypt and in Africa, all over the place, right? I mean, there's so much history. And to this very day, we have vaults around the world, central banks vaulting gold, wealthy elite vaulting gold. And that's what it is. And it has its own characteristics, gold. And of course, platinum and palladium have their own characteristics. And it just so happens it's more on the industrial application side, mainly catalytic converters. Now, what happens during recessions, depressions, economic contractions, when people lose their jobs, when the interest rates go up, loans are harder to get, vehicle loans, when there's less money circulating, if there's a contraction in the money supply, and you have any type of event that would affect negatively the purchasing of automobiles. You can see plainly here, just in this chart that I put up here of platinum. You can look at the dot-com bubble burst. Boom, platinum price collapsed from $600 to near $400 almost overnight. During the last recessionary, the Great Recession they call it, in 2008, platinum fell from around $2,200 to around $800. Again, almost overnight. Absolute collapse in price. So the individuals that bought at $2,200 and then woke up and found themselves at $800, well, that's a pretty tough spot to be in. Yeah, it's kind of come back a little bit, but it hasn't come anywhere near that all-time high. And today, it still sits below gold. And I remember back then, there were times where I wondered if I should get in on the platinum madness, and I never did. I avoided it. When it collapsed, I thought about putting some of my gold towards some platinum because it was less than gold for once, and I felt like, ever since I was a kid, platinum was hard to attain, and I figured here was my chance. Well, I'm glad I didn't, because it since has not returned above the yellow metal. Now, the point of this slide, I know we're supposed to be talking about palladium. Well, platinum is its predecessor. It was used, and it still is used, in catalytic converters, and the markets are very much similar. So let's take a look quickly at the palladium chart. All right, here's palladium, going nuts, going crazy. It's actually one of the coolest metal charts there is, but it still scares me. Solid lows that are getting higher and higher and higher. A couple of big peaks in there. But look at the recession areas in gray. And that's what you want to look at and focus on. All the way back to around 1980, when it just broke that 200 mark. And then it hit that little recession area right before 1980, late 70s there, when Carter was president. It collapsed. You see a sharp downturn after that all-time high. Came back a little bit, and then it fell all the way back well below 100. Well below. I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of, in the late 70s, I think its low is in the 40s, $42, $43, somewhere in there an ounce. 1982 was around $50 an ounce. And since then, we've seen it find more and more use in automobile catalytic converters around the world. And as the populations grow, demand grows, emissions controls grow, more and more catalytic converters being made, with a market in palladium being somewhat constricted as it's a very rare metal, and now with some supply side concerns, the price has always been healthily marching upwards. But you fast forward all the way to these year 2015 onward, and it starts to take that parabolic hockey stick curve upward. Well, we've seen it do that before, 1995 to 2000, and then a significant and dramatic retreat from all-time highs. It went from $1,000 an ounce to under $200 again. But look at the more recent recession, 2008, the Great Recession. We saw it just barely under 600 and then collapse below, well below 200, 150, 160 range, whatever it was. Again, I don't keep track of these metals very often at all. I typically read the headlines, skim the article, and like anything with automobiles and cars, I'm just not that interested. You know, I don't do mechanic work. I don't like picking up wrenches and getting grease on me. It's just not my thing. I've got other hobbies, and vehicles are not one of them, nor the metals within the catalytic converters. So the point of this is, obviously we see a very common trend and theme here. When there's recessions, when there's contractions in economies, we see the platinum family, whether it's platinum or palladium, retreat from their prices. Now, what are we riding on right now in the economy? What do you notice? What do you see? All-time highs. Stock market is doing great. The Dow's doing great, breaking records. Got quantitative easing, low interest rates. Everyone's happy. Everyone's drunk. It's the roaring 20s, right? I mean, it's literally the roaring 20s again. And the Fed is doing their thing. They're pumping money, easy credit, liquidity. Okay, I can see that. Looking good, right? What comes after that? The hangover. Yeah, they're all drunk right now. We've seen this before. It's the same old story. Nothing's new under the sun. Wall Street's drunk. They're on coke. They're running around doing their thing. Well, eventually, the music stops. And then, you got to have a chair. You got to sit down. It's a big game of musical chairs. Well, platinum and palladium don't happen to be one of the chairs in the room you're going to want to sit on. You've heard this allegory, analogy, whatever, before on this channel. When the music stops, typically where you want to sit and park your little tush is on some gold. Pretty stable gold and good real estate, maybe agricultural real estate, something like that. You definitely don't want to park it in dollars. Some people will, some people do. They'll park in currencies, but gold's a pretty good place to go, especially if it gets really bad. Zooming in a little bit closer on the palladium chart to the two more recent economic contractions. Once again, just to drive this point home, the areas in gray, recessionary times, bad times, and you can see palladium not faring well at all. Of course, once there's recovery, people start buying vehicles again, and the automotive industry restarts production, and the numbers start rising. You could see demand there for palladium. Of course, there's other reasons. Speculation increases, people get a little bit more bold in the markets, and of course, palladium reacts to that with a rise in its price. Now, the reason this article's up is I wanted to share with you some opinions that might not be exactly how I feel, but they kind of paint the picture that I want to talk about when it comes to why platinum and palladium are just not my metal. They're just not, I'm not that into them, and I'm definitely not going to buy palladium at the prices we see today. My hedge, my wealth, when I choose to protect it in a metal, I do so in something that has a little bit more of a reputation for doing so, a little bit stronger resume for doing so, and that is gold. Silver, it's less reliable during economic downturns. It performed fantastically during the stagflationary 70s, but in general, silver tends to fare poorly when a bad economy causes demand from industrial users to weaken. Remember, we've talked about the industrial applications of silver at length before, and how when those fall off, silver collapses dramatically. We saw it in the last economic recession. Silver did not do that well. We saw a low of, $8 an ounce for silver back then? Now that could change, of course, if it became monetized and was circulating the globe like it did at the time of the pieces of 8 and the crown and the half crown and the shilling and the silver dollars. If those times again returned and the fiat that we use on a day-to-day basis had to be backed by silver, by gold, of course there would be a stronger demand for the metal and some value. However, with it being mainly a value placed upon it that is due to industrial applications, it tends to suffer, just like the charts that we looked at for platinum and palladium. There's other industrial applications that silver holds close to, that when the economy tends to contract, we see silver prices weaken. Rising investment demand can make up some of that decline. Silver is historically and foundationally a form of money, as we've talked about. It's money for 7,000 years. During a financial panic or currency crisis, the masses may rediscover its monetary utility. Now, we haven't really seen major financial panic or currency crisis. I mean, people that think 2008 was a big deal, they have not seen anything. They haven't studied economics. They haven't looked at any history whatsoever when it comes to a real economic catastrophe. You know, it's bad when you're sitting outside of a jewelry shop with a gold pan and you're swishing the mud around trying to get the dust that falls off the jeweler's feet from working in the shop all day so that you can buy yourself a slice of bread or some crackers for your kids. True story, happens in this world today. Look at Zimbabwe, people panning for gold to buy food. Okay, that's when you have a true economic catastrophe. We haven't seen that yet. We have not seen that yet. Most people in the Western world, again, suffer from normalcy bias, and they believe that because they have not experienced it, it cannot happen. We all know that is not the case. As a matter of fact, those who suffer from the normalcy bias tend to suffer the most when things are or become abnormal in circumstance. Now, the other precious metals, platinum, palladium, have no real history of being used as money. This is why I brought this up here. Investment buying amounts to less than 3% of their total demand profiles. Less than 3% investment demand. With the bulk of demand for platinum group metals coming from the highly cyclical automotive industry. Again, why platinum and why palladium scare the hell out of me, especially at prices like right now. Because all it takes is Ford, GM, Chevy, those guys, Chrysler, a couple of other big automotive manufacturers stopping, slowing production, an economic crisis to where your average Joe Blow can't go out and buy a new vehicle. And then we see a collapse in the prices of metals that you purchased, might hold physically, and hold in a box somewhere, and now they're worth 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 80% less than what you purchased them for. You don't want to be in that situation. And that is what can happen to someone who's buying in on platinum group metals during a drunken rage like right now with an economy. Because all it's going to take is a contraction. I mean, heck, throw that aside for a minute. Look at Tesla. Look at the electric car movement. The world of no longer even having emissions whatsoever. Could you imagine if there was a breakthrough and there were several other competitors starting up with these battery-powered cars that have no internal combustion engines? Well, there you go. Now you have approximately 90%, 97% of the entire demand market placed upon the Platinum Family Group wiped out, gone. So, again, that's one of my points here. That's why these family of metals are they make me nervous. It's cool to make coins out of them. I'm glad some people have them, but I'm not going to jump all over them. Not surprisingly, platinum and palladium face long odds during recessions. Tune into this part. Listen. In fact, platinum prices have declined through the duration of 6 out of the last 7 recessions. 6 of the last 7. It would be interesting to see what happened to them in a major depressionary event. Or, again, currency crisis, financial panic. Because we haven't really seen that as much with the Platinum Family Group because they're newer on the stage. Imagine trying to take Platinum Family Group metals to people that don't have an assay ability and exchange them for some type of free market value. I mean, one of the problems that they hold is the familiarity. People knowing the name, knowing what it is. And most of you on this channel, of course, you do know because you follow these markets. There's a lot of people out there, they've never heard of palladium. They wouldn't know what it is. They wouldn't even know that it has any value whatsoever. It looks just like a lot of other metals. I mean, it looks like burnished aluminum or something. It looks just like platinum. It looks like a piece of steel. It looks like silver in a way. It's not something that stands out even like gold. And there's not even a long history of it being in coinage. So again, you have that. There's just not a lot of interaction or familiarity, a lot of history behind it. And I think during a major financial panic or currency crisis, it would be even more so damaging towards the platinum family group than the prices you see declining during recessionary events. During those times, people are going to go with what's natural, what's real, what's history. I mean, obviously gold, obviously silver. Will the platinum family group hold some value? Sure, it beats holding a bag of rice, but I'm not going to give you a whole lot for it. I'm just not interested. I'd rather have a box of bullets and a nice rifle than an ounce or two of platinum or palladium, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to throw a lot of cash their way. Never would, never have. And that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 pre-82 copper pennies worth on that. So really, it's more like 4 cents nowadays. Man, my 2 cents has gone up in value. Okay. Now to close out, the one thing palladium might have going for it, and this is one of the first things I ever heard about it almost 20 years ago, was that palladium had links to opening up the world of cold fusion as an energy source. And that, to me, could be the big breakthrough. Like, if you knew that was going to happen, yeah, you'd want to be stockpiling palladium. Now, here's a little funny little conspiracy theory story for you. What if that's the reason palladium's really going up in value right now? What if they unlocked it? What if the secret's out and certain people know about it? Now, I don't know. I don't think so, though. I don't think that's it. But could you imagine? You'd be doing pretty good then. Because if, in fact, palladium ever were to be digested for that very reason, and it were to happen, that we would see palladium prices rise significantly. There would be significant demand because, of course, people want clean energy. They want good energy production. And just like anything that's linked to energy production, there's going to be value placed upon it. And supposedly, palladium is a key component in that process. So if that ever happens, well then, holding palladium is a good thing. I'm not holding my breath because we all know what they do to people that come up with very efficient and almost free energy sources that are clean. They end up disappearing or falling off of boats and things like that. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's the end of my discussion tonight. That was all I really had to throw at you for the record-breaking palladium prices. Not into it. I know I see it in the comments sometimes. Hey, what do you think of palladium? You see palladium prices. Hey, JM, what do you think of palladium? Should I get some? And this should answer that question. Again, palladium scares the hell out of me, so I don't buy it. Take care. Have a good night. Don't forget to like the video. Hit the thumbs up if you want. There's a little bell somewhere on your screen. That's notifications if you want to get notified. Go for it. And subscribe if you're not. I'll wave hello to all the lurkers and creepers, those who come by the channel just to creep on me. Lurk, see what we're talking about. If they actually stuck around for 20 minutes, I'd be surprised. They usually tune out because they got something dumb to do. And dumber than this, which is surprising. I think they go, rifle through their crayon box and try to pick out their favorite flavored crayon. So if you're still tuning in, you little crayon eater, strong work. Glad you're here. And fix your tie. It looks horrible. All right. Have a good night.